Hello, everyone. Welcome to Farm Progress Show Day 2. I'm Mike Pierce, and I'm really excited to be here again. Thanks to all of you for joining us virtually as well. We appreciate you being a part of the Farm Progress Show from wherever you are joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, here in just a few moments, we are going to begin our Congressional Roundtable. We're watching to see what can happen over the next several months with this farm bill, and we're going to get some expert insight on that here momentarily. Before we do, however, this next portion of the program wouldn't have been possible without the help from a very important sponsor and partner. So please join me in thanking Barchart and in welcoming Andrew Ward to the stage. Thank you, Andrew. If you want to grab that mic on the end there, that'll be perfect. Excellent. Well, we really appreciate Barchart being a part of the Farm Progress Show. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us here today and helping put this on.
Oh, it's our pleasure. For us, it's great to get out here and understand a lot of our users, meet a lot of our customers, and just spend some time understanding the real thought leadership. So great idea sharing, and we're having a good time too.
You're having a good time. Andrew, I don't mean to ask you a question out of school here, but that accent doesn't sound local, if I may say.
No, a little south of here, originally from Australia, but I grew up in a rural community. Impressed with this show. Yeah, we think we have shows back in Australia, but this is big. I shouldn't be surprised, but it blows me away with the stuff you've got here.
Andrew, now at Barchart, you are the head of commodity sales. So you are working with elevators, with growers. Talk to us a little bit about what you do with the commodity sales department and the technology you're bringing to the farm.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. Yeah, our products are basically our customers are your elevators, yeah? So our big innovation over the recent years has been to put a lot of that information that we've had for a long time into the mobile apps. So many of you will transact with your elevator, collect prices, see cash bids, etc. We're behind a lot of that technology that makes that happen.
So we all love technology, Andrew. I mean, we love technology when it makes our life easier, I should say. Can you talk a little bit about how Barchart's working to make that transaction easier for folks throughout the value chain?
Yeah, and that's the big challenge, yeah? Like it has to be useful for the elevator, it has to be useful for the farmer. And we're trying to please a diverse audience, yeah? When we think about the adoption of technology, we all have our preferences, we all have our habits. It takes time to make changes. So, you know, for us, we're very conscious not to change the way people do business. Instead, very conscious that we give people a choice as to how they interact with their elevator. And I think if we did a quick straw poll here, there is plenty of producers that still love calling the elevator. Some of them love their SMS text messages. Others want to transact digitally. And it's our job as a technology company to make those tools available and let people choose how they want to go about that interaction.
Now, Andrew, you said a couple of times there, Barchart is a technology company. It's not just a source for market data. Let's talk a little bit about AI. That is the hot new phrase. Whenever we hear technology, anytime we've got a lot of data, which is the commodity markets, we think AI can be a fit. Fill us in. Is it yet?
Well, it's a hot topic, isn't it? Yeah, we've got a bunch of data scientists like many of the companies here, and we're trying to make the most of that data and information. You know, personally, I think progress and that evolution will be managed. It will be quite slow. I think the real applications is perhaps some of the ways that the elevators service you, to be able to dig through your delivery tickets, your open contracts, etc., and to provide that information in a real-time manner. So, you know, to me, it's going to be very incremental efficiencies. It's not going to change the world, at least from the way you communicate with your elevators. And as we adapt that technology, I think over time, that incremental change will be beneficial, but it won't be a game changer off the get-go.
All right. We're going to see it. Then it's going to be a part of our lives, it sounds like, maybe just in the background.
I think you'll feel it more than see it. Yeah, there'll be a time when you have that automation in the conversations and the automation in your interaction, as opposed to a brand new widget or a brand new tool that self-automates or take over a lot of the existing activities. So you'll feel it subtly, but it won't overtake your existing methods of communication.
Fascinating. It's going to be interesting to watch this develop over the next couple of years. Andrew, before we let you go, would you tell our audience where they can learn more about Barchart, specifically the commodity sales side?
Yeah, exactly. You're at barchart.com. Many of you will be super familiar with it. We have a couple of million eyeballs on it every month. That's a great host, a great source of information. and a great starting point for your journey with Barchart.
Fantastic. Andrew Ward with Barchart. Let's join me in giving them a big round of applause for being a part of today's Farm Progress Show.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy. Sit down in the chair there, sir. Much obliged. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate that from Barchart. All right, folks. We are going to begin the Congressional Roundtable. We're going to go ahead and kick things off. We've got 3 of our congressional representatives here to join us. Come on up. Representative Ashley Hinson joins us here. Rep. Hinson, welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Chairman of the House Ag Committee, G.T. Thompson, joins us on stage. Good to see you, G.T. And Randy Feenstra, Northwest Iowa native, Hull, Iowa, 4th District for the state of Iowa, joins us here on stage. We'll let you folks settle in, get comfortable, waters under your chairs if you need a little sip while we're talking. And let's go ahead. I've been talking a lot. You folks have not yet had a chance on stage, which we hate to see for politicians. We want you talking. Rep. Hinson, if you would, give us the introduction for folks who are out of state, might not be aware of your work here in Iowa.
Sure.
Fill us in.
Sure. Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out to this year's Farm Progress Show. I'm pleased to be a visitor in my colleague Randy Feenstra's district. So my district encompasses 22 counties, mostly northeast Iowa. My committee work is centered around the appropriations process. So, Iowa is a really unique state. We only have 4 members of Congress, but we serve on, I think, all of the best committees, including the Agriculture Committee. Randy's on that, as well as Zach Nunn, who will be hopefully joining us in just a few minutes. Marionette Miller-Meeks serves Southeast Iowa. She is on the Energy and Commerce Committee. Zach is also on Financial Services, and then I'm the appropriator. So as I say, I try to spend the taxpayer's checkbook wisely. I also serve on the Agriculture FDA appropriations, so we try to help fund a lot of the priorities that our good authorizers are working on in their committee as well. So that is a lot of the work. That is a lot of the work that I do in DC and in the district.
Fantastic. Thank you, Representative Hinson. Really appreciate it. Let's welcome to the stage. Join me in welcoming Zach Nunn from Urbandale. Representative Nunn, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you so much for being out here. Thanks to the team for leading it. We are thrilled to have GT, our incredible chairman, out here. I just want to thank all of you guys out here. I mean, after State Fair, after getting kids back to school, after getting out in the field, we still all made a little bit of time to come to the Progress Show today. So I appreciate you being out here this week. It's thrilling. We're just up the road here in Des Moines. We've got a great team here. Iowa has truly been able to outkick its coverage when it comes to representing ag, serving on ag, and really delivering for ag with Randy, Ashley, myself, and our 2 incredible senators sitting on the ag side too. So as a military guy, first time in Congress, I've got a lot to learn here, but we've got a great mentorship team that's really been leading the charge on this. And most importantly, I'm very proud of the bipartisan bill that came out of the Ag Committee already. We've got more work to do, but we've got a good start thanks to our chairman.
We're making progress. That's what we like to see. Let's introduce Randy Feenstra next, and we'll come back around to Chairman GT. Mr. Feenstra, tell us a little bit about yourself and how things are looking up around Hull.
You bet. So I represent the 2nd largest ag district in the country, the 4th District of Iowa, all of Western Iowa. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you got to think about what we have. I mean, obviously, number 1 in eggs, number 1 in corn, soybeans, cattle, hogs, you name it, turkey. And then all of a sudden, our biofuels. I mean, in Iowa, 44 ethanol plants, 11 biodiesel plants. So ag is the heartbeat of our state. But I just want to say I appreciate our chairman for being here and my colleagues for being here. But, the chairman, he's been here, I think, ever since I've been here. He's either come to the fair or Farm Progress Show. He just knows how important ag is and how important Iowa is to ag, that we feed the world. So thanks for having us, and look forward to the questions and see if we can talk together.
Absolutely. And so, folks, the plan for today is we're going to have a couple minutes up here. We're going to talk amongst ourselves on stage. And then at the end, we're going to take 15 minutes. We want to hear from you. We want to know what the questions are on the ground in Iowa. So be thinking of them as we have this conversation today. Now, without further ado, let's introduce Chairman of the Ag Committee, G.T. Thompson. G.T., tell us a little bit about yourself. For folks here from Iowa might not be familiar with Pennsylvania, fill us in. What's your background? What's your history? And why are you passionate about agriculture?
You bet. Well, good morning, everybody. And thank you for, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to come back to Farm Progress and to be back in Iowa. I'm from Pennsylvania, a lifelong Pennsylvanian. Although you grow amazing commodities here in Iowa, including my grandchildren. My favorite crop, Iowa crop, the Thompson boys. They were born and lived in Eldora, And so I have made many trips to Iowa. I might have set a few land speed records when my son called up and said, "Katie's in labor." Penny and I got here at record time, put it that way. Not that we broke any laws.
No, of course not. We wouldn't assume such a thing.
Nope. But I'm just so thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be the 53rd chairman overall of the U.S. House Agriculture Committee, a committee that represents the number one industry in our nation, the industry that every American family, and quite frankly, a lot of families around the world, are dependent on. They're dependent on for all the things that are essential in their lives: food and fiber, building materials, energy resources. And Iowa is, I know for a fact, having spent time here and been proud to come back here as ranking member and chairman, Iowa is such an important agriculture state. And quite frankly, this show, Farm Progress, is so important because it just feeds right into the definition of American agriculture that I've used ever since before I stepped into a leadership position with the Ag Committee, but certainly robustly since then. We've weaved this definition into our subcommittee job descriptions and jurisdiction, and this is a definition that's been weaved into every title in the Farm Bill. American agriculture is science, technology, and innovation, and that is so important. And so let me just say I'm proud to be here, proud to be back here. I have hosted, and I'm going to count this as a listening session actually today, because we're going to hear from folks in just a little bit here. Maybe that's why I'm on the Agriculture Committee. I believe in using what God's given me. That's 2 ears and 1 mouth. And so always make a commitment to listen twice as much as what we speak. I have chaired probably at this point between 90 and 100 different listening sessions across the country. A number of those have been in Iowa. I've been to 40 states, 1 territory, and that's because we wanted to write this farm bill from what I call the outside in. Too often you see legislation that's done inside the Beltway, inside the Capitol, and that's not how you get good legislation that really impacts real needs. You do it from the outside in. You come out and you spend time with the people that are, in agriculture, it's the folks who are providing us the things that are essential in our lives. And we've done that in a great way. We've wound up with a bipartisan bill. In fact, I like to say we've done it in a tripartisan bill: Republicans, Democrats, and the voices of American agriculture. And that showed it showed in the bill that came together. We have 40 measures. Now you're looking at 4 Republicans here, but we have 40 measures that I put into this farm bill that were just led by Democrats. Now, I didn't put it in there to buy a vote. I would never do that. We put it in because we vetted them, and they helped to put the farm back in the farm bill. And 140 measures that were led in a bipartisan way, including with these 3 members as Republicans and a Democrat, and then a whole host of measures that were just Republican led. And at the end of the day, it showed its fruit as we were able to pass a bill. Although there were naysayers that said GT's never going to be able to put a bill together. We proved them wrong. They said we're never going to be able to pass a bill out of the committee. We proved them wrong. And they said we'd never be a bipartisan bill, and we proved them wrong. So we're going to get this thing done because you need it. And quite frankly, this is a bill that you helped us write. So proud to be here.
Hey, thanks so much for filling us in, giving us that background, GT. Always appreciate it. And the challenge, of course, is we've got to get it across the finish line. We've got to get a Senate version to come out. We've got to, make them line up, and then it's got to be signed by a president. We'll see how that looks. Let's talk about the timeline to get the rest of this process done. And I know it's outside of your scope, but GT, you keep track of what's happening in Washington. For those of us who aren't plugged in to the political wheelings and dealings, what do you expect to see if things go well to get this farm bill across the finish line totally signed by a president?
Well, my goal is to get it signed by the current president and then get it executed by the next president. We need that. You need that. You need that certainty. You need that hope that this farm bill brings. And I'm sure we'll be talking about the different components of it. It is a farmer's farm bill. We finally putting the farm back in the farm bill. I'm working every day. I know these members are helping with that, getting us in a position that we were able to bring this farm bill forward to the House floor in September. No, we don't have that many weeks left in September before the election, but I'm committed to doing our very best, because you need this. And I think that it's an important part of the process. The Senate doesn't have a farm bill. I love it when some pundits will compare the two farm bills. They don't have one. They have 90 pages of ideas, and some of those are good ideas. I acknowledge that. They're great. They match up with what we've done. And some of them are, well, let's just say not so good ideas. And I don't think, and I work with Chairwoman Stabenow. I don't think she feels she's got to get 60 votes in her chamber. That's her role. I don't understand that role, but that's her role. And I don't think she's confident that she could get 60 votes. Absolutely confident we could get 60 votes with our bill. So the goal is, quite frankly, is to give the Senate a gift, and that would be the passing off the House floor of the Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2024. And then it will be after the election then that we would cross the finish line. Of the four corners, and that's the chairman, myself, and the ranking member in the House, Chairman Scott, or Ranking Member Scott, and in the Senate, Chairwoman Stabenow and Ranking Member Bozeman. Our teams are maybe talking about starting a pre-conference. So that's movement in the right direction. Bottom line is we need the Senate to move ahead. Senator Bozeman has put out a template. There's no sense in the minority of putting out legislative text, but his template lines up almost exactly with what we passed. So broad support in a tripartisan way. So that's the goal.
All right. So we need some pressure to get some movement in the House before the end of September.
We do, and that's where you all come in. We need you reaching out to members of the House. If it's members like this, feel free to reach out and just say thank you for their hard work. We do have some holdouts or some folks that are kind of have not committed yet to.
Should we give him the list, GT? We can give him the list.
Not today, but if you call, we'll give you the names. And so that you can weigh in with members, and then simultaneously, it's not just the House, but we need to be laying down. Let's call it the fertilizer for in the Senate.
That's right.
To grow the vote there, and so reaching out to our senators so we make sure we're lined up with 60 votes. We need to get this done. That when you look at the debt that farmers has incurred is highest level going back to the 1970s. The amount of farm loss that we've experienced, the commodity prices, and right now the forecasts aren't that things are going to get better. It's going to get worse. The trade deficit that we have, which is $35 billion. I mean, we have an administration that failed to fill two of the most vital. They waited 2 years into their administration to fill the two most vital positions when it comes to trade, the chief agriculture negotiator and the undersecretary of foreign agriculture and trade. Now they wound up getting two incredible individuals. Yes. Absolutely. But to wait 2 years and left that empty, there was nobody at the table to hold either Canada or Mexico's feet to the fire under the that trade agreement or China's trade agreement. And so we need to get this done.
Absolutely. There's a whole lot of issues. GT, as you just mentioned, agriculture is grappling with a lot as we come to the end of 2024. I want to turn to Randy Feenstra. Well, you mentioned your district #1 in pork production. An issue they've been confronting is Proposition 12 in California, Question 3 in Massachusetts, these ongoing animal rights issues and animal care issues that are percolating. Fill us in. What's been the impact in your district now that Prop 12 is in effect, and what can be done about it? What should be done about it from your perspective as we go forward?
Yeah. Again, this is a huge issue. And you look at pork right now, $80 per hundredweight or thereabouts. We've had about a year and a half, year and three-quarter of we're losing $35, $40 a hog. This is significant. So then you also have Prop 12 saying you got to change the size of your gestation pins. And I just want to thank Representative Hinson, put together the EATS Act, did a great job. But what that is simply saying, and now it's in the Farm Bill, that we have to preempt some of these laws that have happened in California and other states, that you got to have interstate commerce. You can't just have one state creating rules that are going to affect everybody else, and especially our producers and our growers. And so we're hoping that this continues through the Farm Bill, that it makes it through all the way and gets signed, that we can stop all these laws and rules that really screw up interstate commerce and really put a downward pressure on our pork producers and our other producers.
All right.
Well, let me just say the provision in the Farm Bill is called the Save Our Bacon provision. And it's important. I don't know whether you realize this, but in California, what this has done already is many grocers are now selling bacon by the slice. Think about that. The cost has gone up so significantly, by over 40%. And if you're struggling financially, if you're a family that's living paycheck to paycheck, you're not buying pork because you can't afford it. If you're middle class, what we're finding is families are making decisions of what protein they're going to purchase. And if their money will stretch further for another protein other than pork, that's the direction they're going. And instead of going in and buying a slab of bacon that I grew up doing, and we still do, in California, they're buying 1 or 2 or 3 slices, whatever the recipe calls for, because that's what they can afford. And so this provision absolutely respects states' rights. And it respects states' rights to make dumb decisions. Right? If they want to make a decision like California did, that was driven by emotion and political science, not by agriculture science, we don't stop them from doing that. They just can't dictate that practice to another state. And I want to just lay out for you, if you don't understand, if you weren't aware, when Prop 12 passed in California, it was kind of, and I know we never say there's an off-year election, but it was an off-year election. There wasn't anything at the top of the ticket driving out the vote. And a very small percentage of Californians came out and voted in that election where they had a ballot initiative on Proposition 12.
And as I recall, GT, that ballot initiative passed like 50.03% to 49.07%.
With a very small number
tiny,
of people
tiny margins
voting. So
yes.
Here's my prediction in California. They're welcome to do this, but I think in the spirit of Save Your Bacon, there's going to be an uprising in California, and there will be a strong emotional drive at some point in the future to do another proposition that restores their ability to have affordable pork products, and it'll be successful. And I think the turnout's going to be a whole lot higher, because if you start getting away with people's bacon, you're getting yourself in a hard way.
Representative Hinson, let's dive into the EATS Act, because that has been, you wrote that about a year ago, a little over 2 years?
I introduced it 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And then again this Congress. But yeah, I want to thank the chairman for working with us on the language, because it really did bring everybody to the table. And I think, when the Supreme Court upheld Prop 12 and said to us as members of Congress, hey, yes, we're going to uphold this, but you need to do something. I think GT did a really good job of coming to the table and saying, hey, we do want to make sure that, again, California can make dumb decisions. Massachusetts, which I think actually went even a step further in saying, not only are we restricting the sale of these products, but the transportation of these products, which I think is a clear overreach there. I think this language that we settled on really did a good job of compromising there. But I think that the most important thing is we're not telling producers what to do here. We're respecting producers to raise their animals the way they want to. The cost of compliance for this, we assume, is around $4,000 per sow. That's a huge burden on our producers. And this is what, as I've been traveling through my district talking with our pork producers, if somebody wants to cater to that market, knock yourself out. That's great. We want people to have the ability to buy pork that suits their values and their needs. But we want to make sure that that pork product is accessible and that we're not shutting ourselves out of 14% of the market in the country.
And let me just put a capstone on this. We brought everybody to the table, an army of constitutional attorneys, all the commodity groups. And one thing was very apparent is that overall, because of the size of the poultry industry when it comes to layers and egg production, they were very comfortable with the existing provisions that they're working under in California. So the egg industry is excluded from this. Okay. And we did that because that was the consensus of that industry. I think we've done a good job with this, and I appreciate Ashley's early leadership on it. And we need to get this done, because it's a slippery slope. You think about this, the next person, you just use your imagination that if initiatives like this are allowed, these propositions are allowed to exist that aren't based on agriculture science, and I've had this discussion with my friends in the pork industry. It's gestation pens that are limited to at least 24 square feet. What happens if they, finishing pens and other parts of the pork production? And the strong response I get is it would never work. Well, I don't think that's a consideration with these emotional propositions like California and Massachusetts are putting forward.
Well, and you've struck a chord when the opposition spends a lot of money to drive a truck around Washington, D.C. with our faces on it to try to say that we're tied directly to the Chinese Communist Party.
let's-
Yes.
Fill us in on this.
Yes.
I missed this whole story. So this
So,
is in D.C. in the last year.
In D.C. to try to put pressure against the EATS Act, specifically in this language, that somebody actually funded a little truck, a billboard truck that they drove around Washington, D.C. with pictures of myself, Senator Marshall, who is our Senate lead on this legislation, and President Xi Jinping's picture. So I think nothing could be further from the truth if you do the research on the
Two
policy.
Midwestern Republicans and the Chinese leader,
That's
communist
right.
leader. Okay.
Yes.
And
Can't make it up.
And they're buying ads in my district with my picture and the Chinese
Supporting the
leader.
local economy, buying
Yeah,
ads in your
that's
district.
Which
Yeah.
quite
Look at
frankly,
that positive
which
spin.
quite frankly is helping increase my vote totals.
Right.
And
Right.
everybody knows it's ridiculous. Let's be clear about this. This is not being led by the agriculture industry. This is led by the animal rights people. And farmers are the greatest champions for animal welfare. We care for our animals, shelter, water, health. I mean, there's nobody better at animal welfare than the American farmer. But this is the animal rights folks that are pushing this, and their ultimate goal, and it's on record. I looked at a quote from a grassroots of one of the major organizations, Humane Society, and he has publicly put in print that they won't be satisfied until they eliminate livestock agriculture. And that's what this is about. It's about the elimination of American livestock.
Representative Nunn, I've let you sit awful quiet over there. We're not going to let that continue here. I know you've taken a lot of focus on immigration and some of the challenges that we're confronting there. A challenge I've heard many times in agriculture are the lack of laborers, especially foreign laborers recently. Can you talk a little bit about what could be coming on the immigration or perhaps labor front that's on your radar as you look ahead to either this year or next year?
So I think we should just look at what's happening here in Iowa. Now, I'm a sixth-generation farm kid, grew up on a century farm. We all know what it is to do chores in the morning, but we also need to recognize where ag is going, particularly for our 87,000 family farms here in Iowa. Additionally, we've got 800,000 jobs in this state that depend on a healthy ag community to be able to move forward. And that means we got to have a lot of hands helping this out. The reality is, in the next 2 decades, we're going to see most of these family farms transition to the next generation. It's one of the reasons I'm so proud to be able to lead with this team on ramps for the next generation of family farmers, young and beginning farming tax credits to help those folks really become our next farmers. And here in Iowa, I don't know if you know, but the median age for a farmer, and you just need to look around this tent to know it's a good thing, 55 or over. In fact, the majority of those folks are going to be north of 65. No other generation has been asked to do so much work to both feed, fuel, and secure our nation's future than this generation of farmers. And challengingly here in Iowa, that group that's under 50 is less than 15%. So as we look around at our friends, our neighbors, our sons, our daughters, our grandkids, how are we going to keep them involved in this? Immigration becomes a real partnership in this. We've got Tyson's that just shut down in my district. And I've spent a lot of time out there trying to help that industry find a new labor source and a new mission set. But ultimately, it also becomes a pathway. Do we need to ensure that we have a good process for legal immigration to be able to take hold in places like Iowa? Whether you're at the top end and you go to Iowa State and you're an ag economist who want to stay here because you came from India and you've done everything right, you should get to be at the front of the line. Or whether you're somebody who's a seasonal worker who wants to come out here and work in poultry or in pork or in any of our industries, a pathway here to help them not have to go back home for 3 months and potentially be corrupted by a cartel, but to have the ability to really stay here is meaningful. Something we've all led on. But let's be clear. We have 8 million illegals who entered this country over the course of the last 3 years, folks who jumped the line in front of people who wanted to come here legally, who had gone through the process, and who are a huge component to Iowa and this country's success. These folks coming here the wrong way is the reason that we all passed H.R. 2, the most comprehensive border security bill. And the Senate can talk all it wants about saying that they have an idea or a plan. I mean, candidly, that's bullshit. That's an ag term, so I can use that at the Farm Progress Show. That is erroneous. That is, they didn't even get a bill out of the Senate that could compromise on both sides. We've been able to lead on this. I think what Iowa has done, and I look at my great state legislators around this room, Secretary Nag here in Iowa, we want to be able to have an immigration process that works for Iowans. We don't want to have a process where people who come here illegally and take advantage of the system get first handout and displace good Iowans, good veterans, good farmers, and good seniors in this process.
All right. All right.
Absolutely. And just to show you that the Agriculture Committee can walk and chew gum at the same time, while we were writing and preparing this farm bill, I took advantage of the rules of the 118th Congress. You have 6 subcommittees, and we did that. But I could appoint and form a task force, and I did that on agriculture workforce. And this group really did a great job. And we're serious about getting a product that we can get across the finish line done. So I didn't do what we would normally do. When you're a majority, you always are able to stack the deck so that the vote goes your direction. And we did this even. 8 Republicans, 8 Democrats. You normally would have a chairman of the majority party and a ranking member. Ranking member doesn't have as much power or authority. We did 2 co-chairs. Don Davis out of North Carolina was a Democrat, appointed as co-chair, and appointed Rick Crawford out of Arkansas as a Republican. And they did a great job. They brought in folks from both production and processing, because you can't have one without the other when it comes to, and the goal was to look at what were the implications of a lack of certainty for workforce and the implications for food insecurity, because it's significant.
Yes.
And they did a great job. If you go on the agriculture website, you'll be able to find those recommendations. After they come up with them, I put them back at the table and said, how strong are these recommendations? And so we made them vet them and vote on them. And I'm proud to say that there are all but about 3 or 4 were 100%. And the people who are serving on this committee was across the diverse range of political polars. Okay. And so now we get this farm bill done. The next step is we're going to take those recommendations. We're going to write a good piece of legislation. I wish I could tell you it was going to go through the Ag Committee because we'd get it done, but it's got to go through Judiciary Committee. But the fact is, we've got a great bipartisan, the basis for a great bipartisan bill, and quite frankly, tripartisan, because we heard from the producers and the processors of what their needs are, and that's will be reflected in this legislation.
All right. Well, hopefully we can get some movement on that bipartisan legislation as we get into this next year. Another issue that Congressman Feenstra, I'm going to turn to you. Your district has been in the crosshairs of animal disease issues. HPAI, not just in the poultry industry, but the crossover to dairy. It's a huge issue. African swine fever remains a concern in the Dominican Republic, just off our southeastern shores. What was the word from your district to fight in the Farm Bill for animal disease response, or in a separate piece of legislation? Where do you see us going from here?
Yeah, this is so important. And I want to thank G.T. Johnson, the chairman, to understand how important it is, not only for my district, but for all of Iowa. We lost 21 million birds in this last year to avian or for bird flu. And then it crossed over into livestock and dairy. And there's this extreme concern. We were at the diagnostic lab yesterday at Iowa State. Iowa State does a tremendous job trying to figure out solutions and what we can do. I just wrote a letter to Vilsack, USDA, saying we've got to collaboratively work together and figure out a solution here. Because what happens, it went into dairy, but what happens if it goes into hogs? What happens if it goes into other animals? And that's where African swine fever could also happen, coming up from Central America. So we need more dollars. We need more indemnity plans. How do we move forward? Vaccine banks. These are all things that are part of the farm bill that we have in our farm bill that we've got to move forward, because you talk about something serious to our economy. You think of African swine fever hitting our hog. It'd be catastrophic.
What would happen? Congressman Feenstra, lay out. Yes.
You can kill 21 million birds and you can get rid of them fairly easily. You can't do that with hogs. There's just no way. And we saw this through COVID, right? When all of a sudden we had to euthanize some hogs. It doesn't work well. And I just think about the indemnity process and the costs that are accrued when you have to go down this path. That's why we got to prevent it, make sure it doesn't come. But if it does, we got to be absolutely ready And that's what I'm worried about.
And I would hope, and I want your take on this, those components of the Farm Bill, animal disease, traceability, bipartisan support for those particular components. Excellent. Okay.
And we've got some included in the Ag FDA appropriations bill as well, some additional funding to help push back on research, also on things like high path avian influenza. The other area where we're really focused on too is making sure that just across the board our animals are healthy, and that means inputs have to be the right thing. So we're also taking a look at sourcing of those inputs, that provisions in the Farm Bill as well, to take a look at supply chain there to see, you know, are we sourcing a lot of those additives from China? What happens if China decides to,
Right.
for whatever reason, you know, you talk about biological challenges that could surface, but also what happens if they make our animals less healthy? That makes them more susceptible to disease as well.
Well, I mean, I remember back when COVID first hit and we had supply chain disruptions from China, so much of our mineral for livestock feed comes from Southeast Asia.
Right.
Yeah.
And just real briefly, we're making a significant investments in research. We're still a leader in the world in agricultural research, but unfortunately, countries like China are quickly catching us. So we're making a significant investment in research, and also $2.5 billion to be utilized by our land grant universities for laboratory facilities. And we got a lot of great successful. I'm a product of a land grant university, Penn State. We were just
You were at Iowa State yesterday.
I was at Iowa
I remember
State.
you saying how great
And
it
I,
was.
and I love all my land grants. I was flying the colors with my pen.
Yeah, you were.
But if I wear that back home, I'm going to lose votes. But the fact is that we have great, successful alumni who will make very generous contributions to our land grants, you know, and they'll wind up with their names on buildings. But I haven't yet to meet an alumni that wants their name on a sow barn. And those are the kinds of laboratory facilities that are so important today. But so that $2.5 billion is a mandatory funding is a significant investment and the right step forward.
All right. Let's talk to one of those issues that is much less easily agreed upon in Washington, D.C. Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Programs, or SNAP, formerly known as food stamps for a lot of us who've worked in this space for a while. We see this every Farm Bill negotiation come up. It's 80% roughly of the Farm Bill's funding goes towards SNAP and food assistance. There's always pushback. There's always back and forth. It seems to be one of the major hangups on this most recent Farm Bill. Is it time to split them out, Chairman GT?
Absolutely not.
Explain why, please.
Well, first of all, there's a practical side of that, given the fact that the amount of really production farm districts are so small compared to the size of Congress. We need that coalition, although I will say that the coalition has not been a great coalition, and some of the hunger folks and quite frankly, every member sitting up here wants to make sure that American families get access to the nutrition that they need, no matter no matter what their income is, and especially those who are struggling in poverty. And so dividing it from a practical perspective doesn't make sense. It also doesn't make sense overall. Quite frankly, I think we all take great pride in a rural value that, and I don't know if this is an urban value. We may lay our heads on pillows in Washington 3 nights a week, but we're not from there. You know, we're just camping there. We're rural folks, and in rural America, neighbors help neighbors in need. And that's what Title IV of the Farm Bill does, the nutrition title. It really helps to supplement, doesn't fully replace, but supplements the nutritional needs of families struggling in poverty. But it's more than, and that's about food security.
Yes.
And quite frankly, food security is national security. That's why this Farm Bill is called the Farm, Food, and National Security Act. At the same time, the nutrition title is not just food security, it's workforce development. What is our number one need? One of our number one needs in agriculture and every industry in this country, it's workforce, right? Well, the nutrition title does that. That 80% of what we spend on the Farm Bill, which is nutrition, also pays for folks who are between the ages of 18 and I think 58 is the number, 57. If you're on SNAP and you're not disabled, you don't have preschool children to look after, you are required to be engaged in workforce and career and technical education training. Because what you really need if you're struggling in poverty is a job. and a better job. That's long-term food security. And we fund that. And we need that workforce today. America needs that workforce. That's the backbone of our economy. And finally, let me say the nutrition title, Title IV, is a market program as well, because there is not a calorie that is consumed under the nutrition title that is not produced by a farmer or rancher someplace. And so it's a great market program for our farmers as well. There's all kinds of reasons why we ought to be celebrating the nutrition title. Now, we've made it more accountable.
Okay.
And I accomplished some of that negotiating with President Biden 2 years ago with the debt ceiling. That's already in law. We increased the age. We made it more accountable. We're going to have report language in there that's going to hold our governors accountable because the abuses that you hear of SNAP, some people call it food stamps, hasn't been called food stamps for decades.
That's media. That's how we always say it.
I
SNAP,
know,
formerly known
but
as food stamps.
It's SNAP. The abuses are really in the execution by the states. And so we're going to do something that's never been done before. We're going to have report language in there that says if you participate in a SNAP program, well, that will be every state.
Okay.
You will be required, the governor will require, not a spokesperson for the governor will be required to come and testify when called upon before the Agriculture Committee and explain how they administer those nutrition programs. And I already have a short list of governors that we want to start with. That's right.
Representative Nunn, what do you got?
Yeah, no, so I think GT's laid out a really good example of why SNAP not only is so important. I've got the most urban area of Iowa, Des Moines, but we all have rural areas. And this is not an urban or a rural issue. This is everybody who needs the assistance program. This bill that the House has passed is a $1.5 trillion farm bill, the overwhelming majority of it going to help kids. In fact, it's one of the largest investments we've made in food security in our country, in our nation's history. And I think that's something really impressive that we should all be very proud of. But I also want to highlight the fact that what the Senate would like to potentially see in their cocktail napkins of scribbled out notes on what they might do, one of it is moving SNAP to a point where it becomes overwhelmingly all of the farm bill. And I will say that's very dangerous because we need to have farm in the farm bill. And as much as we all might enjoy eating, you can't do it if somebody didn't grow it, produce it, and put it on a plate. And it doesn't just show up at Hy-Vee or Fairway or whatever they have in New York City. It shows up because somebody in this room spent a lot of time being able to make sure that all of our families got to eat at the end of the day. The other aspect I want to be very clear here on is that there are ways that we can hold SNAP accountable. The chairman just laid out a big priority here of making sure that states are being accountable with taxpayers' money. Because at the end of this is all money that somebody here in Iowa or Chicago or someplace invested so that families and communities had access to the food they need. And when certain states exploit that or take advantage of it, that does a disservice to all of us. I also would like to see, working with a lot of you here in this room, including some of our frontline guys, expanding options for families on this. This is not an expansion of SNAP, but it's an update to some of the things we've seen. I talked to a single mother here in Iowa, and she works third shift. And when she goes home, she can use her SNAP dollars to go buy a frozen turkey. She can de-thaw it. She can cook it up. She can serve it to her kids. It's a long day for a single mom working a lot of hours. Right now, we'd like to be able to see options for us to continue to expand this to say, you can also go to a Casey's convenience store here and get a rotisserie chicken that does the exact same thing, same nutritional value. Let's start being smarter about how we help families help themselves. And to GT's point, let's also make sure that those folks also are getting the skills they need to become part of this workforce in a really meaningful way. That not only helps them, that helps all of us make sure we have a society that grows. That's how we start paying off that $34 trillion in debt.
That's another question. Yes.
And there are about 20, last number I looked at, 24% of individuals living in poverty that receive SNAP benefits are working. They're just working 1 and 2 part-time minimum wage jobs. And what the Farm Bill does really is to help to create a ladder of opportunity so that they can really pull themselves up. We can give them a hand up into better paying jobs. And so it really is, it just makes for a really strong Farm Bill.
All right, we're going to open it up from the floor here for questions. So be thinking, what are you curious about in terms of the goings on in Washington, D.C.? But before we do that, while folks are thinking, all of this discussion that we're having about the Farm Bill, about the funding and the financing, my understanding is if we take the figures in the Republican Farm Bill and it passed and we funded it, the total cost of the safety net would be about 0.2% of the entire federal budget. This is a lot of fighting over 0.2%. Is it going to get easier?
Well, it's overall with nutrition.
Yes. Yeah, that's total, right?
It's about 1.75%
Okay.
of what we spend nationally.
Okay.
0.2%, I think, is very
Safety.
accurate when it comes to the farm part of the farm bill. And so it is ridiculous. This should be the easiest bill to pass if you put it together the right way. And we have done that. We've done that from the outside in. And here's a plain fact. There is no greater return on investment of $1 spent out of Washington than one spent on America's number one industry, Iowa's number one industry, Pennsylvania's number one industry, which is agriculture. You think about the number of jobs, the amount of economic activity. I don't want to ruin your appetite for lunch, but the number of taxes that are paid by farmers, ranchers, agribusinesses, to all levels of government for hopefully funding what is essential services. The amount of food security we get, which is actually national security, the positive impact of American agriculture, which can be defined as science, technology, and innovation on the environment and, quite frankly, the climate. I don't know whether you realize this, but the American farmer, and I use it broadly as I take in, when I say farmer, I mean ranchers and
yes.
foresters and processors. American farmer is a climate champion. This sequesters 6.1 gigatons of carbon annually. Now, I have no idea how big a gigaton is. I'll be honest with you. We have a colleague, Doug LaMalfa, who's a rice farmer in California. I was standing in the middle of a rice field, and when I was talking, he was not paying attention. I'm used to that, but he was Googling gigaton. And he tried to explain to me in the group what a gigaton was, and I still didn't get it. But he said, well, you'll get this. He says, you know what the abbreviation for gigaton is? GT.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, that's a big deal. I like that. I get that part. But the fact is, we sequester 10.1% more than what we admit. There is nobody in the world that does it better than the American farmer when it comes to sequestering carbon. And the best news of it, when we sequester it, we grow things. We create topsoil and healthy soils, which increases profitability and productivity for the American farmer. And so all that is a result of the return on investment on that, what you say, 0.2%?
Yeah, 0.2%.
0.2%.
Heck of a return. Let's open it up for questions now from the crowd. If you ask, I'll repeat it so our listeners joining virtually can hear us, and then I'll ask you folks to answer. Yes, sir. So the question from the floor is, he works with special needs folks trying to get into agriculture, find additional work. So the question is, what options are out there, or what potential is out there for encouraging folks who are looking to work, willing to work, maybe dealing with some special needs? How can we get them into agriculture safely?
Well, let me start out with one example, and then and I think everyone here has ideas. It's really that's an issue I'm passionate about. I spent 28 years working with individuals living with life-changing disease and disability, and we have a workforce need, and quite frankly, we have an opportunity need for folks that are living with those various types of disabilities, whatever they might be, physical, intellectual, across the board. And so I think obviously, and I'll start at the younger age, making sure these kids have the same opportunity as every child for engagement in FFA and 4-H. I mean, that is so important. We are supportive of those programs, and those programs can be life-changing for introducing these kids into this program. And then something I'm seeing a resurgence of, which I love, are high school agriculture programs. And I mean, there's a young lady that comes to mind and that registered, enrolled in my VOTEC school, career and technical education school, and got into horticulture and wound up, the employer first wasn't sure about hiring her, but she has been there for a number of years. She's making a great living. She's able to move towards independence. She is probably the most dependable, reliable employee that they have. And these folks just need a chance. They need an opportunity. And so there's a couple ideas.
Continue pushing for it. Glad to hear.
So first off, I just want to say thank you very much for bringing this up, because I think it's a huge conversation when it comes to our workforce, what we're trying to do throughout the state. Do it safely, do it smartly, and do it with respect for the individuals who are being involved. So taking those into tandem, we've led a couple of initiatives here. In Des Moines, we have the School for the Blind right down the street from my congressional constituency office, helping these folks find on-ramps to careers that are going to be successful for them in ways that we haven't even thought of traditionally. I think that's a huge part of where we are in this chapter within ag. We are going from a 100-year-old model to what's going to be the next 100-year model. And it means a lot of new ideas and capabilities are going to be brought to bear in this. I mean, you just have to walk around today's progress show today to see that the tractor that our grandfathers drove is very different than the, combine and farm implement that are being used today. And that means somebody who may have different skill sets, whether it's inability to see or inability to function in certain environments, could be very successful in this environment, particularly with just some additional training. GT brought up the importance of the 4-H and the FFA programs here in Iowa, a place where this really took off. This is an opportunity that we have as a roadmap for us to be successful going forward. And I'll also highlight that we have a number of individuals who may not have the physical ability, but have the mental acuity to be huge partners in this. I mean, I just talked to a guy who was sitting in his F-150 as his father was the one leading the combine, but it's the guy in the F-150 that's monitoring the returns on yield through an app on his phone. And the ability to do this, even bring in some of this gamer generation into a way that makes the future of artificial intelligence's role in ag have higher yields, higher impact, and a higher return, is going to be hugely important, particularly when, here in Iowa, we're looking at a bushel of corn that's maybe $3.90 on a good day this month. And the break-even point for an Iowa farmer needs to be at $4.70 or higher. So we all collectively need to identify, how do we do this smartly? How do we do it economically? And how do we get a higher return? Bringing folks like that into this community is something that we've talked a lot about. I think there's good intent behind it. Let's help forge the pathways based on proven examples that have returned high results.
Thank you. Do we have another question? Yes, sir.
We've noticed some cuts in funding for the Rural Economic Loan and Grant Program, and the RECs are champions for that program, especially here in Iowa. And so I'm wondering, do you guys foresee there being restoration to historical funding levels on that, or is that $50 million that we're cut to right now, is that going to be what we have going forward? Just kind of wanted to get your guys' input on that.
And it's rural electric cooperatives, correct? Yeah. So rural electric cooperatives, the question is, we've seen a significant $50 million cut in loans and grants from the feds for broadly, not just RECs. Is there any possibility of that being restored?
Well, I will just say this, that when we were marking all of our bills, we had the Fiscal Responsibility Act that we passed. So those were the targets we tried to settle on and mark to. And we did look at all levels of funding across the board. And so there are other places where you're also getting funding streams. And so we tried to be cognizant of that as we were creating those bills and negotiating. So I can't foreshadow the future. What my goal is to just get these bills passed and across the finish line next month, because it's very frustrating as an appropriator. We've got all 12 out of committee. And the Senate isn't doing its work yet to come to the conference table on that either. So that's a whole other conversation beyond today. But I want to say this, that we were very cognizant in making sure that we could still find funding streams that could allow you to execute on your agenda and the investment that you continue to make in rural broadband and all of those programs as well, Reconnect and all of those places that you're still making large investments.
Well, I just want to say thank you to rural electric co-ops. You guys have the best picnics It's amazing, your logistics. I love them. It's just, you provide the most affordable electricity, and your owner governed. Um, Under the credit title in our farm bill, we have really worked hard to make access to credit more accessible, trying to streamline the paperwork, um, uh, you know, for lenders, trying to make it so that it's easier to get that credit out the door, credit those who are new, young, and beginning farmers uh, with more experience so that they're able to access credit sooner. I mean, there really is a whole host of provisions with under the credit title that will make, that make that access. But you know what? We've all met farmers who borrow more in a single year than what the average family borrows in a lifetime in order to put in a crop or a herd, hopefully recoup their money and save, have a little left over to benefit their family. And so trust me when I say the Farm, Food, and National Security Act that we have voted out of committee has a robust credit title.
Just push for that passage, it sounds like, is the name of the game there. We got one question left. I want to be sure we get to it before we move on. Yes, sir? Thank you.
We hear and see in the news an awful lot about things like the polar bears are dying in the Hudson Bay. Well, I have here their own research paper from the Hudson Bay province that refutes those deaths. It shows that they've actually migrated to southern Hudson, and they haven't done a survey in another part of the Hudson Bay for nearly 50 years. So the media is stoking the claims that climate change is an extensive threat. And I want to know, are you getting a lot of tweets from certain groups, plus certain initiatives in the Farm Bill that address climate change?
So the question is, how much pressure are you getting from certain groups, certain constituencies to put climate change-centric issues into the Farm Bill, correct?
Well, there obviously climate change is real, but there are a lot of groups out there, as you pointed out, that their whole basis is using political science and not real science. The fact is, and I'll just add one more point to that because I think my colleagues want to speak to this. This whole I hear this push publicly to go to zero carbon. You all know what happens when we go to zero carbon, right? Carbon is how we manufacture oxygen. And so anybody that talks about wanting a zero carbon emission, they are clueless when it comes to science. Carbon is how we grow that's the nutrient that our trees and our plants absorb in order to make topsoil to provide us with nutrition. It's the nutrient that the plant absorbs, carbon, how the air, the sequestration of carbon is used in order to make oxygen. And so if you're in a debate or you're talking with somebody that is just railing on going to zero carbon, just smile at them and walk away because they have no idea what they're talking about.
And you know what, GT, you think about all the producers, we do a great job. I mean, the Lord has given us this great land and we take care of it. And I just think that's so important that we do buffer strips, we do all this stuff and we do it right. And I just want to thank all the producers. You know what's best for your land and you do everything. We want great topsoil. We want all these things. And the producers voluntarily do this stuff. And I just applaud. We always get a bad name. And it's so frustrating to hear, the farmers do this, the farmers do that. You know what? We're the breadbasket to the world, and we take care of our land.
Yeah, we get a bad name, and they've got a mouthful. You know what I mean?
That's right.
We are going to wrap up.
Just a
Representative
closing
Hanson.
thought there. Before I got into politics, I spent 11 years as a morning news anchor. So I sat next to a meteorologist every day, and I can tell you I heard 22 forecasts every single day, and the climate is always changing, right? But what I will say to that is, and to Randy's point about farmers being the best stewards, farmers are the ultimate environmentalists, right? We know how to monitor soil, to monitor nutrients, to monitor how many of those nutrients are going into our water. That's something we care deeply about here in Iowa, because I think we all care about preserving our most valuable asset for the next generation, but we can do it smart. So we're trying to help push back against, not only you talk about places that are wetter and greener. Well, we've also got drought. I think this is the first time Iowa hasn't been drought in
4 years.
4 years, right?
Yeah.
So look at the extremes there. So we need to be focused as policymakers on things that can help our producers navigate those challenges here in Iowa, again, using real science, not political science.
And I'll just end with your point here on the study. One of the pieces that I've been so proud to work with both Ashley Hinson and Randy Feenstra on are really elevating what we're doing at our land-grant universities. Is why I've been leading the Ag BioAct to really create a hub-and-spoke model for being able to bring in the best research that's happening in the field. Because one of the challenges we have right now is this narrative that exists out there, and Ashley's absolutely right. The only person who can be wrong more often than a politician is a meteorologist and still get away with keeping their job. The challenge here is we've got a lot of pseudoscience that falls in. We have real science that's being produced right here in Iowa that we can bring forward and make good policy-based decisions. Because one of the challenges that we're seeing is that we can do everything within the borders of the United States, but if those who are competing with us in China, in South America, in Southeast Asia aren't adhering to the same rules, we've created a two-tier system that ultimately is not only making the world more dangerous, it's creating an economic disadvantage to Americans' farmers. They're going to push us out of business. And I'll give you the perfect example of this right now. It is more cost efficient for a biofuels plant in Georgia to buy stock from Brazil than it is to buy it right here in Iowa or Illinois, because they somehow get a better carbon score than what's happening right here in America. This is a dangerous, not only commodities challenge, but it's a threat to our economic vitality, particularly when we're the ones who are leading the charge and doing this the right way. I appreciate that question. Thanks for all you do.
Let's give our panel a big round of applause for joining us here at the Farm Progress Show. Rep. Zach Nunn, Rep. Ashley Hinson, Chairman of the Ag Committee, G.T. Thompson, and Rep. Randy Feenstra. Thank you all for joining us, and have fun at the Farm Progress Show today. Yes. Folks, if you want to hang tight, we've got shade, we've got a stage, and we've got Mr. Max Armstrong preparing to come back up and fill us in with another presentation. We'll also have a conversation